Horn sadly passed away in infancy, and their youngest son, Curtis, was born in 1944. Grandpa spent his earliest years on the family farm north of Roderick before the family moved to Outlook when he was 3. Those childhood years were filled with adventure. He and his brother Curtis often rode horses with friends and explored the countryside, creating memories that shaped a lifelong love of the outdoors. Grandpa completed both his elementary and high school education in Outlook. During those years, he threw himself wholeheartedly into the activities that he loved. He played hockey, baseball, basketball, and curl. He also took part in choir and Luger League. He was a strong student committed to learning, and he was honored to serve as a valedictorian of his grade 12 class. After graduation, Grandpa attended Saskatoon Teachers College and later earned his degree from the University of Saskatchewan. On August 7, 1965, he married the love of his life, Marilyn. Conference United Church. A partnership that became the foundation of a beautiful life together. This year, they celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary.
Grandpa began his teaching career in Beachy, followed by positions in Morburn and Outlook High School, before settling into a long-going career at Conquest School. Over his 30-year teaching career, he inspired countless of students with his patience, guidance, and his ability to make learning fun. While teaching, he continued taking university classes to complete his degree. While Grandpa and Grandma's first home was a small 8x46 foot trailer where they welcomed the first son, Barry, in April of 1967. That summer, the family moved to Conquest. There, Grandpa and Grandma went into partnership with Bart and Tom Riggs, opening the Shelter Bell Shop, which was a store that was built by Art and Eve and Alex Sibbald. This partnership was formed over 2 beverages on New Year's Eve. In August of 1968, they welcomed their second son, Ted, and they soon moved to a 2-bedroom teacherage in Conquest. In 1972, they sold their store and moved to their permanent home. During the time the house was being built, they stayed briefly with Grandma's parents, Howard and Olive, on the family farm. Grandpa continued teaching full-time while helping on the farm whenever he could.
Grandpa and Grandma cherished their summers together, often heading out on family vacations filled with adventure and uncertainty. They spent many road trips camping and exploring the mountains that took them as far as Ontario and even Disneyland, memories that became lasting treasures for the family. Grandpa also loved the outdoors, close to home, spending time bird hunting and fishing whenever he could. By the early 1980s, farming had become an important part of Grandpa's life. In 1992, after 30 years in education, he retired from teaching and began farming full-time. He farmed a half section north of Conquest before taking over his Uncle Hartwell's land southeast of town, which he later purchased with Barry and Ted. Even after their retirement, Grandpa's days were full of farming, following his son's sports, and giving back to the community. Grandpa was deeply dedicated to the people and places around him. He was involved with the rink, school, church, Conquest Elks, town council, and the volunteer fire department. He loved curling, golfing, and announcing senior merchants hockey and capital ball games.
In 1994, life got a lot busier and happier when grandchildren started to arrive. Grandpa adored following us across Western Canada to watch ball, hockey, and other sports and activities. He loved being part of our adventures, whether sitting in the stands, traveling from town to town, silently cheering from the sidelines. The crowd smiled. Nothing brought him more joy than seeing us play, sharing laughs together and proudly supporting our passions. In September of this year, Grandpa and Grandma became proud great-grandparents together, son of Landry and her husband Judy. Grandpa would tell anyone who would listen that he was going to be a great-grandpa. He was always followed with, "I don't think I'm old enough to be a great-grandpa." Grandpa was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in the mid-1990s. He faced every challenge with courage and determination. In their late 60s, Grandpa and Grandma took their first ever commercial flight to Bulgaria seeking MS treatment. Despite the difficulties MS brought, Grandpa continued to curl and golf well into the 2010s, maintaining his optimism and sense of humor. In the spring of this year, Grandpa and Grandma moved from Conquest to Luther Place in Outlook. Later in the summer, Grandpa moved into the Outlook care home, where he continued to be surrounded by visits from family and friends. On the morning of November 8th, Grandpa passed away peacefully at the Outlook Hospital, surrounded by family. When we think about Grandpa, we think about all the little moments that made him him. Moments that showed his humor, his patience, and how much fun he brought into our lives.
Grandpa was always especially excited when we stayed over as kids. To him, our visits meant popcorn and pop, not just on Friday nights, but every night that we were there. Mornings at Grandma and Grandpa's house were just as memorable. Before breakfast, Kenzie and I would crawl into bed and play the monster game. The rules were simple. One person became the monster, starting down the hallway with big, loud steps, exaggerated roaring, getting closer and closer to the bedroom until they finally scared everyone hiding under the blankets. We would repeat it over and over, each of us taking a turn as a monster until it was finally time for porridge. Breakfast itself always brought its own traditions. Porridge was almost guaranteed, and with it came the familiar debate of, do you put brown sugar on first or milk? Grandpa had a very firm opinion on this. Brown sugar was always first, and he never missed an opportunity to defend his stance. Another favorite part of sleepovers was Grandpa's famous animal pancakes. They didn't always resemble the animals we had imagined, but they never dulled the excitement. And every Christmas, his snowman pancakes actually did look like snowmen. A little holiday magic he perfected just for us.
We made a lot of memories in the motorhome. One summer, Grandpa and Grandma thought it would be a brilliant idea to take us all four of us camping. I only remember this happening once. Grandpa and Grandma probably thought that was enough for all of us. One of the best memories of sitting with Grandpa in the motorhome was while he was announcing ball games. We had the best seat in the house, piled into the top bunk, and over the seats, watching our dads play. Whenever there's a foul ball, the chase was on, and all four of us scrambled to get out the door first, someone usually falling out of the ball in the chaos.
Then there were a couple fishing trips between like Kevin, Barry, and 4 grandchildren. Grandpa confidently told us he knew an amazing fish recipe that was going to be the best fish of our lives. He did not know the recipe. It was so bad he didn't let any of us try it. Grandpa went on 2 canoe trips with his family, one with Kevin, Jared, and myself, and our dog Coda. Coda ended up tipping over the canoe and everybody got wet. The second one was with Barry, Kenzie, and Landry. Everyone stayed dry until the end when Grandpa tried to get out of the canoe and tripped and got wet.
Grandpa was a storyteller, that's for sure. Although the stories weren't always correct, which usually ended up in Grandma saying, "No, Floyd, that's not what happened." And then she would take over retelling the story the correct way. He was our biggest fan and cheerleader in the stands at all sporting events, and he didn't hold back when telling us how he thought we played. We will cherish these and many more memories forever. Memories of Grandpa will return to us and many other people in a number of ways. We will remember his laughter, his stories, and the smile he brought to our lives. We love you, Grandpa.
Thanks. My name is Jim Jones, and I've been asked to have a few memories about my time in Floyd, or Mr. Derdall, as I always call him. Excuse me. I just wanted to start by wishing huge condolences to Marilyn, Barry, and Kevin and their families on Floyd's passing. He was a fantastic person, husband, father, grandfather, and a community life. I guess if I was to open the Webster's Dictionary and flip to the word T and teacher, the definition would be Floyd Derdall. Mr. Derdall, as I've always called him, was in my mind what everyone aspired to be as a teacher. Dedicated, passionate, learned, educated, supportive, encouraging, athletic, and above all, friendly to everyone. Mr. Derdall came to Conquest to live once he married Marilyn Sybil, herself an East Sider, as I always say it. That day that Mr. Derdall came to Conquest after stops in Loreburn, Outlook High School and Beaching, as was indicated, was an incredibly good day for Conquest, the families whose kids attended school here, and the entire community. I think when I remember back to when they moved here, I always, when I was a sub-unit trustee for the Outlook School Division, I talked to Peter Popovich about the impact of a teacher coming to the community. And I said, you need them to be part of the community because they're educated, they're dedicated, they're going to teach our kids, and above all, they know how to run a meeting. And that's what Floyd was to us. He ran lots of meetings, organized lots of meetings, and worked together. We were just lucky that I always called it that we got two teachers at the same time. And Floyd and Marilyn became at the time a power couple in this community. When I talk about power couples, I mean people that put everything they have into a community. It's not just about teaching, it's about bringing the community on. I often used to bug Kevin. And Kevin applied for a job in Beachy at one time, and Lloyd Affleck was one of the sub-unit trustees. And anyways, he said, yeah, I interviewed a young lad from Conquest named Kevin Derdall for this position. And I said, really? And I said, how did he do? He said, oh, he did good, but I didn't think he would be a community guy. And I said, boy, did you miss the mark on that one. Because Kevin is Floyd. Kevin was Floyd. So it's kind of neat how all that came. And Kevin says, I really wanted that job too. So he did all right as well too. But coaching many sports that the boys played in, I always laughed with Floyd. He was always a better athlete than all of us. He'd run and you could hear his keys jingling on the side of his pants, in dress pants and a dress shirt, and his hand holding his pens in his pocket. And he could still sink a three-footer better than any of us, even all the way up to grade 9. So, Mr. Derdall was a glue guy, a guy that held a lot of things together, wanted the best for anyone's participating, and always did his best to get the most out of everyone that he taught. Many times he was the spokesperson, but more and even more often than not, he was a behind-the-scenes guy, always promoting the minority, saying aloud what needed to be said, encouraging community members, stepping up when required, and enjoying every minute of the process. I often think about some life lessons that Mr. Derdall taught me. One was when I joined the Elk Club, when I moved back here, we would always sit around afterwards and play cards. And some of the elder Elks at that time, like Stan McAdam, Lyle Amy, Russ Wyatt, or whatever, would have, and Doug Ball, naturally, would be right there to the end. And we were talking about sports day one time, and some of us younger guys, like my brother Doug and I, and Jeff and a few other of them started taking over the operation of the sports day. And anyways, we're going through the committee, and I was always commenting, well, Mr. Derdall, can you still do this? And, can you do this, or whatever? And he finally says, Jim, you can call me Floyd. I said, you know what, Floyd? You'll always be Mr. Derdall to me. One of the life lessons that Floyd taught me early in life, which if Floyd was on your side, you could get away with a lot of things. Like we always did road tilling of the sand pits because we had a rear time mower and we were a block away from the school, so we'd always say, well, Jim or Doug or Bob, could you guys come and chew up the pits? And so we would, and then he said when you got even closer with him, you could always get out a half hour earlier because you would go and pedal the ice for curling. So you'd head down to do curling, and that was all stuff that you got to do if you stayed on the right side of Mr. Derdall. This very gym, when I walked into it, I had a memory come back, and this gym is so much Floyd. The bell used to ring at 3:30, and Jeff McAdam, Jerry Weir, and I would race to the gym as fast as we could because the buses from all wouldn't come till 10 to 4. So we had 20 minutes of whatever was up. If it was a volleyball net, a badminton net, a floor hockey net, or whatever, but we would race here. So we checked out badminton rackets, and we'd race in here. Jeff always played on one side because he was better than Jerry and I, so we would be a team. Well, anyway, Jeff served the birdie the one day right in between Jerry and I. And Jerry was faster than me and swung at the birdie, hit me in the back with the racket. Well, that wasn't going to go over very well with me, so as he turned around, he grabbed my racket just before I could hit him with it. Jeff had slid himself right behind Jerry. And we used to have this thing where you could slide behind somebody, you give them a little tap, and they'd roll over top you. Well, grub, as we called them, rolled over the top, right down. My racket was in his hand, and it broke the racket. I was thinking, oh man. Jeff was thinking, I think Jerry broke his arm. And I was going, how am I going to tell Mr. Derdall? So anyways, they all took off running. One Jerry for the bus and Jeff for home. And I walked into the staff room here. As I walked by, I was thinking about it. And I handed the badminton racket to Floyd, and I said, I'm sorry, Floyd, I broke the racket. And he said, oh, no problem, Jim. Sometimes that happens. Away you go. And he said, well, how did you do it? Well, I told him I had leaned down onto the floor and it pushed too hard, and I was trying to flip the badminton birdie up. And the racket broke. He said, no problem, that happens. So anyways, I walked out the door and I head home, and I'm thinking, I'm off the hook. Well, the next day, right before 9 o'clock, Principal Smith calls us into the staff room. It's myself, and he'd asked Floyd to be there as well. And he said to me, Jim, this bracket looks like it could be hit up against the wall, or it could have been hit up against the knee and kind of touched Floyd's knee with it. And he looked at me, and I couldn't even look at him, and I said, no, I broke it. I had went to hit Jerry Weir with it. Jerry had grabbed it and went down, and he broke it when he went down. That morning I found out Jerry broke his wrist, but we weren't worried about his wrist. But anyways, Mr. Smith then said to me, well, Jim, you've got to pay for this racket. I said, I was thinking I was getting the strap or whatever, but when I walked out of the room, I'm going, I did not want to make eye contact with Floyd because I knew I had let him down. So as I walked out the door, I was scurrying as fast as I could, and Floyd in fashion used to push that cart around the rooms all the time. You could hear the wheels going. He was catching up to me, and finally he stopped, and he said to me, he said, you know what, Jim? He said, if we're going to have this relationship that you and I have, remember, this was probably, I was in grade 6, so he said, this cannot go like this. You can never lie to me again. And I said, I will never lie to you again, Mr. Derdall. And he said, well, good, then it's over. And I walked out of there and I said to myself, wow, what a guy that is, because I had lied to him openly. And to this day, when I talk about it, he taught me that a hard conversation doesn't have to be a mean conversation. A hard conversation has to be had for you to move forward, but it doesn't have to be mean where you walk away from it and you never want to see each other again. And in my time, in the jobs that I've had and the number of people that I've had to supervise, it's come in so handy because in a lot of cases I have to be the guy that says you need to be better. And that day Floyd said to me, you need to be better. He didn't say it right to me like that, but I felt it and I still feel it. So a lot of times I've used that for the conversations that I've had. And again, as I said, aside from Jerry Weir showing up the next day with a broken arm, that was important to him, but to me it wasn't. It was the relationship that I had with Floyd Derdall. I think another time I was thinking of a bunch of memories that I had, the early memories of Floyd as a teacher from grade 3 to grade 9. And when you think about it, of the number of coaches that you've had, the number of teachers you've had, the number of people that you've had, professors at university or otherwise, when you're sitting around having a drink or a bonfire or whatever, there's always one teacher, and Floyd was that to me. He was always a teacher that I thought if I was going to be a teacher, that's the kind of teacher I want to be like. My oldest son, Corey, is a teacher, and to me, he epitomizes what Floyd was, but he needs to find a mirror. So, just saying. Kevin will remember this story is that I had come home from college in Camrose, and I had applied to be an RCMP officer, but I was waiting to hear if I would get in or not. So they talked me into being a supervisor at the rink. So anyways, it was my week at the rink, so I went to the rink and it was noon hour skating. So a lot of times I was coaching the Bantam hockey team at that time. Kevin and Barry were playing on that team. And they would race down and they'd have 45 minutes of shinning. So I came out of the rink doors and yelled at them, hey, it's 12:45, you guys got 15 minutes to get back, you better get packing up. Kirk and Kevin said, Jim, can we play for another 5 minutes? And I said, another 5 minutes, but you gotta help me scrape the ice. They said, yep. So anyways, everybody else goes downstairs and get ready. And all of a sudden I hear the screaming and I go running out. Kevin's laying down by the boards. He had fallen and his front teeth were hanging out of his. And so I said to Kirk, just sit right here. No cell phones at that time. So I phoned Floyd. I said, Floyd, we got a problem. He said, Jim, what's the problem? Kevin's hurt. What else is new, he said. Kevin had lots of struggles at the scene. Anybody was going to get hurt, it was him. And he says, I'll be right there. So I sent Kirk in and we got Kevin's skates off. And Kirk sent back to school and whatever, and then Floyd comes in and Kevin had blood all over the front of him or whatever, and his teeth were sticking out, and I said, Floyd, I'm so sorry. And he says, Jim, how are you? I go, it's not about me, it's about Kevin. And he said, well, I told Dr. Monroe he's going to be there right at 1 o'clock, and we'll get this done. Do you want me to help clean up? I said, no, I want you to get Kevin to the way he went. That was Floyd to me, is at the end of the day, he worried more about you than he worried about himself. But I said to Kevin many times after that, why on my watch did you do that? So, Floyd was always one of those guys that when I coached Barry and Kevin, we didn't have a great team that year, so I was thinking of all these plays that we could do to try to hit some cheap goals that we could be pretty good at or whatever. So we had done a play called the post play. And Kevin's job on the post play was he would line up as the right winger, and off the draw, Kirk was going to shoot the puck at the net, and then the defenseman beside him. And then I said, when that puck comes to the net, Kevin, bat at it like hell, like 100 miles, as hard as you can. Anyways, we were playing Warburg, and we were up, and we were tied, and it was like the last play of the game or whatever. So I said, okay, let's try this post play, we got nothing to do. So Barry was a defenseman, and Kirk was the forward, and I said, you got to get it to the net. And Kevin, you got to bang away at it. So anyways, works all right. Kirk gets it to the net. Kevin bats away at it about the fourth time it goes in the net. and we're cheering we win 7-6 and life is good. Floyd was more happy than the boys were. He said, "Where did that play come from?" I said, "Oh, we've been practicing for hours or whatever, but I never thought we'd get that close to even trying. We haven't batted it in or whatever, but I thought the kids would be more excited, but it wasn't. It was Floyd. He was there on every part of every game that his boys played. So, I think the one thing that I can say about Floyd is that he changed England. And I know some of this might surprise you, and I see Mario here, and I think in grade 9, one of the best memories that I have of Floyd is he read us books from 1 o'clock to 1:45. And they were Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. The Black Tonellis was my favorite that he had, and there was about 3 different kinds of it. But that between 1 and 1:45, virtually every day was an English class that had me an appreciation for reading, which to this day I still enjoy very much. And that wouldn't be something people would think that Floyd was about, but he sat in front of the class. The only person in our class that went sick was Glenn Latta. The rest of us, do a lot of stuff too. But I think you guys in a lot of time, this is a tough time for the family. And all of us here that have come to pay our respects. I hope that we can celebrate Mr. Derdall's life. There are so many things that are him all over this school and this community. The playgrounds, the sports grounds, the mics at both ball diamonds. I always said to Floyd that, you know what, when Rod Phillips did his 1,000th game, he got his jersey into the rafters. I think between ball and hockey, he probably hit about 5,000. He was our Rod Phillips, or our Bob Duker. He watched more games of fastball and hockey than any of us have played. And he totally loved watching Barry and Kevin and all his grandkids in sports. Thank you, Marilyn, Kevin, and Barry, for sharing your husband and dad. We always bugged the boys, as he called their dad, high-by. As he would race in at lunch and supper, and then he would head out for a meeting, or to do classwork that needed to be done. High and by seems appropriate for this man. But there was one heck of a pile of living between I and by in this community. I know today that I'm going to celebrate the man. Oftentimes, Jordan, my son, calls me his moral compass. Floyd was my moral compass. He poor Jordan. Rest in peace.
Roger and Paul, can you come say a few words?
Guess what? There's left to be said. What a wonderful tribute. I too taught in Michi. We taught there at the same time. And if we wanted to make extra money, all we do is go picking rocks. And I remember picking rocks for this gentleman. We walked behind a half-ton truck. After about 6 to 8 hours of that, you start stepping on it. Bending over was a little bit too much. All those tributes to Floyd are so true. Everybody, he was the best man to everybody. He was the best man at my wedding. And I can remember we waited before my wife, Darlene, was coming down the aisle. We were off to the side, and I said to Floyd, "Have they lit the flowers yet?" He looked at me and said, "No, they don't like the flowers." A little shook up. We did curl together. Norm and Elliot Prentice, if you knew them or know them. Curling in the Wansville and Saskatoon, Floyd and I curled with them. We were 13 years old, and they did an article in the Star Phoenix about the oldest skip, Norm, and the two youngest players. We were kind of the youngest team, I guess, was there. There's so many memories that we have, and they've already been touched. My wife, Darlene, of also 60 years, was reminding us about the picnics in the park, that we would go down with the church group, and we would have races, those kind of things. I also remember swimming in the pool at the outlet park. And once you dove in, you weren't visible for a while. It was pretty dirty. I also remember a number of things that their practice teaching. I know that the only place that we went to was Melfort. We taught in a school there, and then in Saskatoon, I can't remember the school, it was somewhere over on the west side. The one thing that I remember about practice teaching in Melfort was we had to sometime during the process show that we could do some discipline. And I had a habit of having a yardstick in my hand. As I walked around, and these little kids or whatever, and let's call him Johnny, little Johnny was not behaving, and the teacher wanted to show that I could discipline people, and I took and I whacked the yardstick, and the tears started to fall. And the poor little guy was quite shaken up. I'm flipping around here. The other thing I remember about curling, if you remember Mike and Ed Lukewich, very good players. Floyd and I had the opportunity to get all excited about having the opportunity to play with them in the men's playdowns. So when the time was during the day to play, we got the word that the team was put together in an ineligible way. So whatever that meant, I don't know, but we weren't able to go through and play, and that was quite a disappointment. The one thing about Floyd was that he handled things very, very well. And maybe I'll finish up this way. I got my notes. I didn't realize that I don't want to mess this up because I'm trying to fit in where I could fit in, but that's fine. This is a wonderful, wonderful souvenir to have. But it wasn't long before Floyd passed away.
that Darlene and I went into the Elk Hospital. It was very surreal. It was very quiet. We had visited Floyd one other time, and there was a whole bunch of people who are out there now that happened to recognize Darlene and I, and we're doing a whole bunch of this and so on, which was kind of interesting. But the last time we were there, shortly before he passed away, it was quiet. So we went in Floyd, and this was really Floyd. It's really not the way I wanted it to be, but it is what it is. And that was Floyd. He accepted what he had. He was a great friend. And I'm repeating things. When we stayed together at Teachers College, we stayed on the corner of Avenue C and 28th. We stayed downstairs in the house just above the garage. Not a good deal. The smell of gasoline was not that nice at times. My good friend Darlene, before we were married, she just stayed up at 34th and D. Pretty close. So the advantage to us, to Floyd and I, was that we'd have Darlene come down and she would cook food for us. And I was thinking, I think maybe those are some of the things that this sounds silly. I'm going to run by you anyway. And I have no idea what made me think of this. The word Floyd. I wonder if his parents really looked at it. Because I looked at the letters. Nobody else would be this silly, but Floyd, F. A friend. Very friendly person. Fun to be around. BL. Very loving. Very loyal. Very learned. And relates well to the song, Leave on Me. O. Honest. Extremely honest. The why. Ask. And yes will be the answer. And the D. Dedicated. Determined. I will miss him. We all will miss him. God bless you.
We'll now have a few minutes for anyone who would like to come share a memory or a story about Grandpa.
Good afternoon, Marilyn, boys, and all the roses. Joseph Orr is my name, and I had the privilege of going to high school with Floyd and Roger, and later teaching with Floyd at Oracle. And everything that people have said is so true. I didn't go through elementary school with them. I went to a small school north of Broderick called Cromer. And it was kind of a little ecosystem where everybody looked after everybody, and there were no problems, no bullying. Then they told us for grade 9 I'd be going to Broderick. So I went to Broderick, and that's when I got introduced to the term pecking order and bullying. Bullying isn't a new thing, as you folks know. Now you've got cyberbullying on top of it all. But anyway, we had to fight our way through things to exist. And then for grade 10, 11, and 12, they told us we were going to Outlook, which is about 10, 15 times bigger than Broderick, at least. And I thought, oh boy, am I in for an education? But My good fortune was I was in the same room as Floyd and Roger, and although they weren't built like Hulk Hogan, if they said leave the car alone, they let me alone. And it was 3 of the best years of my life. I curled with the boys, I played ball with the boys. In fact, Mr. Bowles, whom was the best teacher I've ever met, made sure that we entered every ball tournament that high school people could. And I remember just 100 yards east of here, we played Tramping Lake for the district championship. And we put together a few hits in one inning and we won the whole thing. Mr. Bowes was a mentor and probably what made Roger and Floyd go into teaching. I would say it would be an interesting study if you could count up the number of his students that became teachers. It would be astonishing. And I'm sure Floyd and Roger have influenced a lot of young students and they've gone into teaching. This is a long time ago, folks. I've seen a lot of Fridays, and this was in the 60s. That's when Tim Horton was still playing hockey. And I am a Leafs fan. I know I suffer a lot of abuse because I'm a Leafs fan. People come up to me and I'm the butt of a lot of jokes. They say, how are the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Titanic similar? And of course the answer is they both look good till they hit the ice. So, you pay the price if you're a Leafs fan. But getting back to Floyd, he and I chased different girls together. And sometimes we chased the same girl, only at different times. What the heck? McCrory wasn't that far away and gas was only 30 cents a gallon. But once he met Marilyn, there was no more play in the field. Till then, though, he had a great advantage because Colonel's dad bought a used Imperial. Now, half you people here won't know what an Imperial is. An Imperial was Chrysler's answer to the Ford Lincoln or to the GM Cadillac. It was a big bomb and an attractive bomb, and it had bells and whistles on it that no other car had. And so I was sure it was a chick magnet. And when I rolled around in that, I felt a little like Elvis. But Floyd had an advantage, and I was sure that the girls were attracted to him partly because of the car. Now, I've made reference to Mr. Bowles. He affected me. I did teach school for 10 years, and should have continued, actually. But anyway, there are so many stories about Mr. Bowles. I don't know whether it was Ray Trudy or who it was. This, for the heck of it, started a rumor that he had a big oak plaque on his head. And the oak plaque had a Latin inscription on it. No one ever saw this plaque, but it made a good story at the time. And the Latin inscription was Ne humanum, ne avoidum, buggerum carborundum, which translates into English, don't let the buggers grind you down. But he didn't. He was just, it's hard to put in words, firm teacher. And if you're just and fair with everybody, even if you get a good scolding, you don't hold it against them. More than once I went down the hall and Mr. Booth had somebody up against the wall needed to be called to order. There's two fellas that, when they're on TV, I used to listen to them. One was Fulton Sheen, and one was Billy Graham. And one of them said a quote which I'll never forget. And they said, "You Christians have an advantage, because no two Christians ever meet for the last time." I look forward to meeting Floyd again, and I can honestly say the world is a better place for Floyd having been here. Thank you.
Hello. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Trevor Sybil, Floyd's nephew. Thanks to you all for coming today to celebrate his life. I want to share a few stories today about Uncle. Years ago, we used to farm together, and when I was a lad, I would often ride in the grain truck with Uncle while Dad ran the combine. We had many conversations about the stars at night, and we would tell each other our thoughts about what else could be out there besides us. I have no idea now what our thoughts and opinions were, but we both agreed that something else had to be out there besides us. And then this is fun. One night when Trent Fletcher and I were young guys, about 11 or 12, we knew Uncle was out in the truck waiting for Dad that night. We thought it would be a good idea to scare him, and we sure did. Seemed funny at the time, but now I'm thinking what pests we were. He had a great sense of humor, so he thought it was funny, I guess. As I got older, Uncle helped teach me how to run grain augers and drive grain trucks. Also rode the swathy with him and learned swathy skills. We also spent many family Christmases with the Derdalls over the years, and it was great. This next story comes from John Ruddle. He remembered it better than I. Uncle taught us in school, grade 6, and one class was geology. And he took our class outside to show us what the humus layer was. It's the layer created by the leaves falling off the trees and decaying. Took us all out there, everybody dumped in so we could see what it was. The last story I have was when we were down in Unger, Sask for a ball tournament. I was a bat boy for my cousins and Barry's team called the 80s. Mid-80s, I think. We decided one day to go into the U.S. for a day trip because we had the afternoon off. And we stopped at the border to show our IDs and use the bathroom. Well, we all said, hey, we're all here, we can go. And so, because we assumed Barry was in the bathroom in the motorhome. So we left the border, headed south because we told Uncle that we were all good. And back in the motorhome, unfortunately, Barry was not in the motorhome like we assumed, but he was in the border bathroom. The next thing we knew, we saw the border guard flashing his lights and stopping us. We thought, geez, what have we done? Answer, nothing. He was just returning Barry to us. We will miss you, Uncle, and thanks for everything you did for us.
thank you everyone for coming. That concludes the end of our service. If a few people could help flip the room for time of fellowship, that would be greatly appreciated.